There's no easy way from one way to the other.
You can recognize,
The boss is screwed up. You got three
he works at the station.
One now, and then there's probably
Had a little bit of an impact.
things that never would exactly.
All right, we're a couple minutes before 9:30. I don't know if there's any, oh, there, public entrant. Come on in, how are you? We're getting ready to start, just take a chair. My name is Elaine McLean and I am chairman of the Birmingham Area Cable Board. And the Birmingham Area Cable Board represents the 4 communities of Birmingham, Beverly Hills, and Franklin in franchise and cable affairs. And with me today, we also partner with BCTV. Greg Walski is here on behalf of BCTV. And also, I'll have everyone introduce themselves. Go ahead.
Mark Roberts,
And
Tim Courier, counsel for Birmingham Review.
Bob.
Bob Morgan on the cable board and also on the program committee for the Growth Operations Manager for Local Television. David Sommerfeld, studio coordinator at BCTV and also a member of the program development. My name is Greg Black. I'm the senior production specialist.
Great. So I have a little overview here. We have a very small agenda just in general. Call the order discussion on talk with program administrators here, as well as other members of the board. And comments and adjourn and just keep an organized session. So we have to move along. I'd like everyone to keep the comments at 2 or 3 minutes because we want to make sure we hear everybody, but we want to have an open discussion and then all right, let's, I guess I would start with the call to order. We're calling to order. All right, discussion is.
If it's okay,
Sure, relax.
sit here. Well, the issue surrounds comments one of my guests made, George Brito, on the show. And I can certainly see if you consider it slanderous. And slander is only slander if it's untrue. The gentleman has assured me he has audio tape. He has filed a suit in federal district court claiming everything he said on the show in court. He tells me there's a criminal investigation going on regarding this thing. Greg Kowalski never reached out to me or my guests to see if any of his statements were untrue. I'd like to point to section 3.3 that states that BAPA is to be a forum for free speech and express a diversity of viewpoints. Okay. Section 4.1 states that BCTV staff are to work cooperatively with producers and provide all technical and production expertise for programming. I don't feel, I wonder why, if Greg thought what I was, Greg Black, what I was saying, or what my guest was saying, was slanderous, why didn't you interrupt the show and say, hey, tell your guest that, maybe this could be slanderous, maybe you should reword it. I mean, we were not notified.
Okay, let me just say that no one up here will respond. But
Okay.
go ahead. This
I'm just raising a question.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And Greg has been great to work with. I don't mean to single him out, but I mean, if, just innocently, one of my guests says something that is incorrect, I would hope I'm relying on the studio personnel to help me out here. And again, if what my guest said is true, which I firmly believe it is, there is no slander. Section 7.7 states that PEG access channels are not legally obligated to adhere to the FCC equal opportunity rule or the fairness doctrine. At one point, about 2 years ago, the first time my show was canceled because Dave Agema, former Republican National Committee man, made the off-the-cuff comment, Mohammed was a pedophile. That he was 53 when he consummated the marriage with a 10-year-old girl. To me, that does not seem like it's untrue, his comment. So, and Leo Savoy at that point said the only way I allow Dave back on the show is if you had a Muslim there to debate him. And so I complied. But here you have Leo Savoy kind of making up the rules and violating this section 7.7.
Okay, so that is your opinion and that's your reference.
Yes.
Go right ahead.
Okay.
Anything else that you have
Um,
on this program?
Well, not only did Greg Kowalski not care if what my guest said was true or not, when I asked him if he would put it in writing that if my guest statements turned out to be true, would he reinstate my show? And his reply, and I quote, "No way in hell." That is not a response from an objective individual. Greg has been out from the get-go to terminate my show because I'm a constitutional conservative, and that's my viewpoint, and I think that shows through on a number of my shows.
Okay, so again, that is your opinion.
Yes.
And I totally get that. I do see that we have a response from the attorney that was sent to you discussing the policies and procedures, or I should say from Greg to you, from BCTV. Do you want to talk about that letter now? Where certain sections are cited. Or I actually did pull up my phone, would you like
Yes.
to read it? Okay.
No, I have 7.4, 7.5, 7.6,
Exactly.
which, if I can turn
So
to.
just for those in attendance, it is a letter dated October 22nd that says, it is from Greg Kowalski to you directly, that it's come to your attention as in his capacity as general manager, that during the recent taping of the video, your guest was George Rico. Statements were made which in my opinion violate section 7.4, 7.5, and 7.6, and those, just for the knowledge of the public, are the policies and procedures sections that BCTV has agreed on that we as the cable board adopt. The statements made by your guest in the opinion of the township attorney, who is here, as representative is here, potentially slanderous and or libelous. As a result, I have decided to terminate your program, quote, Tough Talk with Taros, end quote, for the future. If you would like to discuss this matter further, you may petition the programming committee, which is why we find ourselves here today. So, is there anything else you'd just like to add in closing before I ask for comments?
I would just like to say 7.4 of slander, 7.5 of libel, and 7.6 of defamation. Slander and libel, the truth is always a defense. I have no reason to believe that what my guest said was untrue. In fact, I truly believe it is true. My guest, he says he has audio tape. There's a criminal investigation ongoing into this matter. I'm just very disappointed that Greg Kowalski did not reach out to me to in fact, he said, I don't have to prove that it's untrue. Well, yes, if you're claiming slander, you do have to have evidence that the statements are untrue. So,
Okay, before I allow the attorney to respond, I just want to summarize that when anyone decides they want to become a producer of a show, I also went through the same process, although I've not yet produced my show. You meet with the programming committee, the PEG committee. Bob Organ is chairman of the PEG committee, and also the production people attend, although generally attorneys are not here. And Greg Kowalski is sometimes there, but not always there during the programming committee meeting. And then there's another who wasn't able to be here today, Diane. They review there's a form that you fill out, as you probably remember. What is the name of your show? What is the principle of your show? What do you anticipate doing? How often will this show occur? Some people do one show every 2 years, and some people want to be seen every week. And then BCTV, and the conversation is the concept of the show. Is it appropriate for a community? Is it appropriate for public money? Is it appropriate, and is it a good fit with the policies and procedures? The committee suggests that, and the person proposing the show decides whether they are in fact going to sign on and agree. I signed a form that said I would follow those rules. And I'm certain that you did too. I don't have it in front of me, but I'm sure you did, because to move forward, you must sign that and agree that you've not only reviewed the policy and procedures, but that you would actually, go through with them and follow them. So there are a number of different guidelines in here. I think I'm going to let the attorney comment first.
Well, I guess and I have not seen the show, the attorney that was actually involved in this was associated with him, but from what I've seen, the statements included comments of criminal activity where there hasn't been any.
The letter that was sent indicated that the statements made by the guests were, in the opinion of the township attorney, potentially slanderous and libelous. The standard for this, the published standards are you don't allow slander or libel statements or defamatory statements. These statements, as far as I can tell, were statements of fact that were not corroborated. There had been no conviction. They are potentially libelous and slanderous. When they were made, there was no evidence to support them. And more importantly, at least in my mind, there was no challenge to it. It was, I think it may have been a different situation if a host has a guest on and the guest makes statements that potentially are slanderous, and there's a follow-up question, do you have evidence of that or something to challenge it? That may have been a different light, but the way my understanding this was presented, I do believe the policies set forth by the commission would apply.
Okay, and Greg Kowalski, do you have something to comment on in terms of the process or the letter?
Just the fact that you keep saying that, well, why don't we check on it? It's not our job. You're the producer of the show. It's your job to do that. It's your job to make sure that the guest is speaking honestly. And you can't do that because you don't know yourself. You don't know if what he said is true or not. You think it's true, you believe it, but you don't know it. It hasn't been proven in a court of law. If we get sued for libel or slander, that's an attack on the entire township. That's what we're looking at. I have no objection to your guest going on and talking about what he was doing. In this case, it was a medical marijuana dispensary. That's neither here nor there to me. I don't really care. I care, though, when the township is put at risk of where we could be sued. And that goes far beyond the gas station. That goes to the entire township. That is my concern. I really don't object to your show. I don't watch it, but I mean, it's not my job. It just alarmed me when I was informed that these comments were made, and that's when I had to draw back and have to go and talk to the attorney and to the supervisor to advise them what I had seen and to take it from there. I was not I'm not up in arms. You've circulated an email saying that I'm not liberal and this is a bad thing, and I don't take that kind of stance. That's not my opinion. My opinion is that we can't afford to be sued for something like this. And if we come especially these comments, and I mean, I don't know, I probably should not repeat the comments, I take it.
Well, rather than devolve into personal conversation, let's use the BCTV policies and procedures, which by the way are all public, and they're actually posted on the BCTV website as well. And for those of you who joined us a little bit late, I'm chairman of the cable board, and we are the contracting body. We contract with BCTV through PEG funding to produce our public educational and governmental channels. Educational channels are handled by the schools. Public access channels, which is local color and flavor and information as guided by the FCC, is one of our channels, and the other channel is municipal access. So meetings like we just had here, cable board meetings and municipal meetings are the other meetings we produce. I'm going to go next to Tim Courier, who is the attorney for the cable board, also for the city of Birmingham as well.
We've adopted the rules of Bloomfield Community Television and agreed to follow them and defer to their judgment with respect to what rulings they come down with, because they're reviewing the program, we're not.
All right, Steve or Greg or David, do you have any other comments in terms of production or what you are responsible for in terms of the policies and procedures?
I'll just chime in real quick, but if you look at 4.2, producer's responsibility, I'll skip most of the paragraph, but towards the bottom says the producer is ultimately responsible for all program content, copyright approvals and FCC law, creating and purchasing sets of approval. So basically, copyright approval and FCC laws, and you're in charge as the producer of all the content. And you said earlier about Greg Black being the director. We're in charge of the technical aspect, making sure your show is going to look good with graphics and camera position and lighting and editing and that type of stuff after the fact. So I just wanted to throw 4.2 out there as what the producer is ultimately responsible for, and then
thank you. And Greg, when you are producing a show, your responsibility is what to your hierarchy?
So, in essence, just echoing what Steve said, I feel my only responsibility is the producers are aware of the policies and procedures, and if I see something content-wise that may go against those policies and procedures, it's just my job to alert the general manager.
Okay, and David, did you have anything to add? Okay, very good. Bob, as the PEG chair, did you have anything to add other than policies and procedures which we adopt and update, which is documented on the front and posted on the website?
No, Tim outlined our role very well. What we do, we contract BCTV, but I do have a dual role here in that I am the cable board representative for the programming. When producers want to produce a new program, they come before the program committee. We let BCTV and Greg Kowalski make those, make the meetings and make the decisions, and we also comment on each one of the programs. I think that Greg has the authority to air whatever public program he deems reasonable, and I think he also has the right to stop certain programs from airing. Whether you take it to the entire program is another discussion. So that's all I have to say.
All right, so at this point, you have a number of, I assume, supporters, but you have a number of people who would like to share information. We have sort of a special, a select amount of time, I would say 15 minutes. If you'd like to pick people who feel they need to stand up and share a few minutes, I'd appreciate it. Yes, go ahead.
I apologize for being late, but could you please read what the comments were, because that'll set the context for these comments that are going to follow.
Yes. I won't dictate that. I will allow the attorney and the general manager for BCTV to comment.
Is that something we can do, or is that expose us to libel?
Well,
The comments discussing the programming, you mean?
What it is that caused his program to be pulled off the air.
The program was not actually, it was recorded, it was not produced, and it was never aired.
I see, so, we're all adults here today, so why can't we hear what it is that?
I'm not saying that we can't.
Yeah,
hear it.
I
I'm saying that we
apologize,
have
but
an
I'm
open
asking the
discussion
gentleman.
on
Right,
whether the attorney thinks that's appropriate because of the exposure, and I will let him weigh in.
Well, it's not statements that were made by this body.
Correct.
And this is a hearing.
It's a subcommittee.
I would suggest it may be quasi judicial, and therefore it would be subject to an exception. Where judicial statements, I believe it would be, particularly with the subject matter, it would be appropriate to give an example of what the statements were.
Who would you like to read those?
I don't know if I've got these verbatim.
Those are verbatim.
Okay. What was presented to me were in reference to Inkster Mayor Byron Nolan. There was a statement that the mayor owns 2 dispensaries under the table. The mayor offered us money under the table. The mayor tried to sabotage us. It was a complete shakedown. They wanted to take over our business and for us to walk away. He is a racist. He is a criminal, a thug. Inkster City Council is filth like this. Mayor controls the council. And then a statement that the mayor's mother should be ashamed. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. The nephew, by name, I don't know what that name is, who is a sheriff's deputy, was shaking us down. He is a thug nephew. Nephew is a bag man. Mayor and nephew wanted to give us cash money under the table against them because they are Chaldean. They only want black businesses in Inkster. They don't want Chaldeans there. It is clear they wanted us out because we are Chaldeans. Those are the
All
statements.
right, so
that were
those
provided
are the
to me.
statements. So what I would ask is, Mr. Taros, if you wanna pick a few people that you'd like to speak, or they can self-select, whatever you want. You just
Okay.
have to watch the time.
Okay,
Please.
I know Joanne is on a deadline, so could she go first?
Absolutely, just stand up and just take a moment to give us an overview. Thank you for attending in your name, Joanne.
Thank you. I'm Joanne Kocher, JoanneKotcher.
Thank you. Go right
This is
ahead.
my book, Donut Dolly, an American Red Cross Girls War in Vietnam. I served in Korea for 14 months and in Vietnam for 12 months during the war. We were the first women allowed in a combat zone. Are there any veterans here besides this man?
Thank you for your service.
Thank you for your service. Thank you to those who are not here for their sacrifice.
Ms. Kocher, you might wanna just stand up to the, just read to the mic and just go ahead and read your page in. Thank you.
On Sunday, we celebrated the 100th anniversary of the end of World War I, the war to end all wars. Since then, we've had World War II, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, and on and on. The lesson learned here is that there is no such thing as the end of wars. Our country's survival and our freedoms must be fought for over and over again. Today in this room, one of those freedoms is on trial. Will this man, Paul Taros, exercise his right to free speech, or will it be denied to him? In Vietnam, a supply truck I was supposed to be on was ambushed, and the soldier who was sitting in the seat I was supposed to be in, Sergeant Harris, was killed. My life and my freedom are a gift he gave to me. Sergeant Harris is only one of thousands of people who have given their lives for our freedoms, including freedom of speech. I can only repay Sergeant Harris's sacrifice by guarding those precious freedoms. Today in this hearing, I beg you, don't let Sergeant Harris have died in vain. Protect the free speech he purchased through my voice. Don't cancel a little radio program because you don't like what a guest said. Don't punish the host who asked an innocent question not knowing what the answer would be. Whether you agree with the guest or not, he has a right to his opinion. Sergeant Harris died to guarantee him that right.
Thank you very much for your time. We appreciate your service.
My privilege.
Go right ahead. Thank you, sir. Can you just give us your name too?
My name is Louis Meldman, M-E-L-D-M-A-N. My wife and I live in Birmingham, Michigan. I grew up there. Our 3 kids and our son-in-law grew up there, and my 2 granddaughters are growing up there. So I've been around at my age, and I have an idea of what's normal and what's out of bounds in this area. Second, I've known Paul for some time, Paul Taros, and I found him always to be a very nice, regular, honest, intelligent guy, the kind of guy you want in this neighborhood. Paul likes politics. I voted for him myself in the primary a couple months ago. He lost, a lot of people lost. And he had a political television show. It wasn't knitting, and it wasn't cooking, and he's into it, and I think we're lucky to have him in. Third, this idea of slander is not that simple. Number one, it has to have 3 elements. First, it has to be untrue. Now, that's not been established. Second, it has to be a malicious and an intentional effort to do harm. And third, harm has to be done. Now, nobody, I don't know, even if the program had aired, I don't know how many people in Inkster would have watched Birmingham television. I don't know how many people in Birmingham, no offense, Paul, but I don't know how many people in Birmingham would have watched this show. So to establish harm and intent are extremely, exceedingly difficult. And as far as we know, there was no harm, no foul, no culpability on the part of the guest, certainly not on Paul, not the TV station, not the board, and not the city. There's no harm and there's no foul. Fourth and last, Henry Kissinger said that the reason that university politics are so vicious is that the stakes are so low. And I hope that this is not what we're looking at here. I hope there's no one in the board or affiliated with it who are drunk with power. And they have, I mean, no offense, but you only have so much power in this board. And I hope people are not acting it out by picking on an innocent man, a mild-mannered guy, and trying to throw their weight around, exercise some sort of power over him. My advice to the board is to take a deep breath, take a step back, and to let this go. Let Paul have his show. He's been chastened enough at this point, and I can guarantee you from my many years in Birmingham, Michigan, that you'll sleep easy, and this will all be a dream, and when you wake up, you'll forget it, and you'll never have to think of it again, and we can all go on living our happy Birmingham, Michigan lives. Thanks.
Thank you very much for your help, and we appreciate your comments. I'm also a 60-year resident of Birmingham. All my kids went to Birmingham schools. My parents are still here. So we probably went to high school together. We never know. Small world, isn't it?
Well, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
My name is David Thomas, 25-year resident of Bloomfield Township. I'd like to make a couple of quick comments, and I'll try to keep this brief. Number one is, we're seeing censorship all over the place. College campuses can't even have a conservative speaker on the campus. This is a real dangerous precedent you're going down. It also probably violates the state constitution on deprivation of civil rights under color law. And also, there's federal code, Title 18, sections 242 to 272 of the U.S. Penal Code, which, if you're found guilty of taking away somebody's civil rights under the colored law, 10 years, $10,000 fine, or potential penalties. So I think you folks are on a very slippery slope here. I think we must encourage freedom of speech. Paul's had very controversial speakers on there. When I was running for Bloomfield Township Supervisor, he interviewed me. He also interviewed the other candidate for the office who won the election. That's how it should be. We should be able to get different views out in the public. Cutting out, creating censorship, especially on public officials, is criminal. It will be a detriment for our democracy, to the republic that we all live in. It's a very dangerous precedent.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your participation.
Good morning, board members.
Morning.
My name is Dennis Marburger, and I am a longtime Bloomfield Township resident. And I have to fully disclose, I do have a bias. I'm a friend of Paul's, and I've been a guest on the show 3 times, so I happen to think it's very high quality. But I would also point out that while the words of the guest were blunt, say harsh, those were the words of his guest, and having studied and read and being involved in the political process here in Elton County for quite a while, and reading things and listening and listening to radio, watching television, and reading journals, that sort of thing, allegations of criminal activity before there's been a court case to adjudicate whether that was actually criminal are, I think, fairly commonplace. If the mayor and his council and the other people that were named by the guest were to take exception, they might have something to say to the person who made the allegations, but that doesn't mean that you'd be forbidden to say, hey, I think there's been criminal activity taking place, and the person might say, I have personal knowledge of it, which is what the guest was saying. So I don't think it rises to the level that we heard in terms of the accusation against Paul and his show. But secondly, I would say, and I think Mr. Melton made this point, I mean, I think somebody else had brought this up, you might look at that one episode and say, maybe we're troubled, and so we review that and toss it back and forth in that case. But the show itself, to cancel the whole thing, seems a large overreaction. And I think, as Mr. Thomas said, a damaging one. Paul does have lively discussion on that show, and he has different viewpoints. He often, I know he tries to get people of differing viewpoints to be on at the same time, if you can get that. So I believe he does have the journalistic creed and code in mind. He believes in fair play. He believes in having all the information come out and let the people that watch the show or that hear the debates make their own decisions. And I really think that in terms of there being a citizen, volunteer, journalistic enterprise, a Tough Talk with Taros is tremendous. In fact, I really think that since he's done it, it has been quite honestly the #1 political TV talk show in Oakland County. And we in Bloomfield Township and our friends and neighbors in Birmingham are quite lucky to have that. And so I urge you to let Paul continue with his outstanding journalistic enterprise. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have a couple more minutes. Go right ahead and introduce yourself, please. And then this gentleman can be last. Go right ahead.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Good morning, my name is Sharon White, and I'm from Bloomfield Township, and I'm currently the president of the Bloomfield Republican Women's Club. We have 6 meetings a year, and the Bloomfield Cable does record our speakers. And the speaker, if they want to be recorded, they fill out a form, understanding that their comments will be put out on public TV. Some have chosen not to, but the majority have. Some are facts, some are majority probably are opinions. We should not be censoring the opinions and facts that our speakers and our guests provide to the public, our public television. This is information, and the key word here that I find that is potential slander and libel. Potential is, geez, standing right here, we could be potentially slandering somebody. I mean, we have so many rules and regulations, it's choking us. So, we have a First Amendment, I think we should stand by it and not everybody be offended by everything that is potential. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for attending, we appreciate your help. And then, go ahead, and then you can be very last, go right ahead, sir. Your
Good
name?
morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Bill Nalu, and it's kind of a surreal moment, to be honest with you. At about 8 years old, I was born in Iraq, and at 8 years old, there were cousins that would visit from America, and they would describe this mythical land, this American landscape, as this place that's lined with gold. And when we immigrated to America in 1975, the first thing I remember seeing when we came to the airport is potholes and cold weather. And I thought, where's the gold-lined streets that we were talking about? And so we fast forward some 40 years later, and I stand before you, not as an Arab American, but as an American with Arab heritage. And we're defending, oddly enough, free speech. The reason that they're still coming here with all of the problems that we say we have, they're still coming. They're literally climbing over walls to get here. And so while we sit here and we debate the future of a cable program that we can argue is offensive or not offensive here, let me just submit to you as an immigrant that the worst thing that we could do right now is sanitize this great land of ours so that nobody gets offended. It's supposed to be offensive. We're supposed to offend each other because we're supposed to have conversation about why it's offensive. We're supposed to choose why we're here as Americans. I don't know how else to put this other than, I guess, I was a guest on the show. I could totally see how the Brico interview could be offensive. I totally understand. And if it's a situation where we say, you know what, let's do a rerun where we have somebody who can defend themselves there. But it's not like he was out of line here. We're supposed to say things that are controversial. That's what we're supposed to be as Americans. And so I ask you one more time, regardless of what happens with this show, I submit to you that if this show is canceled, it's coming back in some way, shape, or form. It might not be Paul Taros even, but it'll be somebody else. We don't have to have cable in order to be able to exchange ideas and values as Americans. Thank you very much for your time.
Absolutely, thank you very much for attending. We appreciate your comments, thank you. And finally, your name, I'm sorry, again?
All right, my name is Chris Thurnell, C-Z-E-R-N-L.
Thank you.
So a friend of mine from West Michigan reached out to me regarding Paul Taros, who I'd never met, but he had this broadcast show that was canceled. I searched Talk Tough with Taros, and I watched some recent videos. I learned about Cooper Nye and his run for the 11th district. It was a 30-minute forum where this candidate can speak his mind on a variety of topics. I thought he was articulate, reasonable, and really the kind of person we would want to have in public office. As an independent candidate, I'm certain that Mr. Nye appreciated the additional visibility that his show, that this show brought. I also thought, wow, how many times have I had mail in the last 2 days, like this stuff that comes in from local candidates. And I have no idea who these people are, but Mr. Taros has the show where he actually interviews these people. And, for the benefit of the candidates and the benefit of the district. And I thought, wow, I wish he had candidates for the 51st district, from where I've been. I watched the show regarding the pros and cons of Proposition 1, the marijuana ballot initiative. It was, again, very well done, with Paul acting not so much as a moderator, but as a facilitator, advancing discussion, allowing each person with different views a good opportunity to state their positions. Unlike most news shows that probably all of us watch, here was a show that successfully highlighted both sides of a position for 30 minutes in a way that didn't devolve into attacks, and very different from what you get from the mainstream media. I watched another video on the debate of Proposition 2, which involved redistricting. which we could all agree the districts are crazy. Once again, it was 30 minutes of allowing each side to state their position, with Mr. Taros asking probing questions without attacking, and giving every opportunity to each side to state their case. I personally had little knowledge of Proposition 2 before watching the video. After watching, I walked away having gained a decent knowledge of the pro and con arguments for this proposition. And again, I found myself thinking, what a service this guy does for this community. Impressively, there are over 40 videos in this collection for Mr. Taros in just a short 1-year time frame. And that's what we have on YouTube. And stories with constituents in a way that's unique to this area. I'm certain that these candidates appreciated and valued the opportunity, just as I'm certain future candidates will appreciate and value the same opportunity. In addition to political candidates themselves, the Taros catalog also includes shows from guests that have expertise or knowledge on different political topics, again, further helping to inform the public about the topics that the candidates are discussing. I believe there's unique value to the community for Mr. Taros' show, and I would applaud a decision to continue its production. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
If I could try to speak several times and I got up ahead of me. If I could have a moment, please, I realize.
If you have 2 minutes,
I will.
that's it. And we
I
have to
appreciate
move on, but thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Diane Damascus. I'm a member of the Wayne State University Board of Governors, and I had the opportunity to be interviewed on Paul's show. And I want to talk to you about the service that you offer and how important this show is. As a volunteer position, Wayne State is an unpaid volunteer position that's run, we run for election. This is the opportunity, he provides the opportunity for candidates like myself to talk to the public. The drop-off for voting for those positions is tremendous because people don't know those candidates. We don't have the money to spend to pass out, nice literature and get on network TV. But Paul offers that opportunity for us to get our word out. You're informing the public, and I think that is a responsibility that is tremendously important. So his show offers opportunities for people who don't have a voice otherwise to have a voice. I'm a member of a university board. We just talked about the problems at universities with freedom of speech. We are working on that. What kind of a model are we setting? What kind of are we setting if when they leave college and they come to their community doesn't offer freedom of speech on its cable show? So I certainly hope, I'm sorry that, the guest made some comments. I can't control what someone says to me if I interview someone. Obviously you chose not to publish it or put it on TV. So it was an error. I'm an educator. If I shut down everything because of one error, there would be no students graduating.
Yep.
So please consider an error that was, that will be corrected, I'm sure. And don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. You have a great show here. You have a great service to the public. Don't diminish that and get rid of that service because of one incident.
Thank you very much, and it's ironic you should say that because if anyone has seen me on our shows represent the cable board, you will hear me say I'm the voice for those who have no voice in cable all the time, because everyone's had a disagreement with their cable provider at one point or another. So at this point, I'm just going to ask for final comments from the attorneys, city attorneys, and also from DCTV, and we will adjourn. Do you have anything to wrap up?
Just, you've heard the basis for the action taken. It's for you to determine whether it was a reasonable action based upon the comments you've heard.
Yeah, not me personally to decide, just so you know, for the body to decide. Yes, go ahead, Greg, anything?
Yeah, just a couple points. I was a journalist for 40 years in newspapers. That's why I'm very intimately aware of what libel is and what slander is and what the potential impact of those are. It's one thing for me to say, I don't like your politics, I don't like you. It's a whole different role for me to say, you're a crook, you committed criminal action, you belong in jail. That is beyond the realm of free speech. It's the same as applies to going into the theater and saying fire. That does not give you the right of free speech. That is not covered there. So,
Please, explain it.
that we're not going to be exposing the township to that kind, if you can't hear me, is that better? We're not going to be exposing the township to that kind of a threat of that kind of thing happening again. If Greg Black hadn't told me to take a look at this could have got on the air. It would have gone on YouTube, it would have been seen by somebody who would have called the mayor of Inkster, and I guarantee you there would be a lawyer at my door with a subpoena, and I would have to go to the supervisor and explain to him why Bloomfield Township is being sued. This is a very, very serious matter. We take it very seriously. We cannot put ourselves in a position where this could happen again. And I'm sorry, because you bring up a lot of good points, and nobody believes stronger in free speech and good debate than me. But good debate does not include criminal, calling somebody a criminal. So.
And then finally, excuse me, we've had a very respectful discussion. Let's just finish that, because obviously we all have feelings about this. This has to be a business discussion in an organized fashion. Tim Courier, excuse me, I'm affording everyone the same respect that they afford me, and I appreciate that moment. No, I understand. We totally understand. Tim Courier, do you have anything to say?
I really got nothing further to add. We've signed an agreement with Bloomfield Community Television, which is operated by the township, adopting their rules and procedures, and that's what it says.
Right. So just so everyone knows, the Bloomfield Community Television policies and procedures are adopted by the cable board. We contract with BCTV. This is not a handshake. This is a formal contract. We are guided by very specific rules. This is public money, clearly. Everyone and anyone is available to review these online. There are very specific guidelines, as I alluded to at the beginning, that you agree to if you produce a program, if you bring an idea forward. We do have specific guidelines on things like indecent, profane, and obscene. Those things actually have occurred. We've put those programs according to these guidelines from 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. That's what the rules provide. We adopt these. I recommend everyone refer to it. It is all linked on the BCTV website. That's what I would say in closing. Is there anything else we need to do? All right. Are we adjourned?
I'd like to make a comment.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I have seen Paul's programs and enjoyed them. Not always agree with everything that's been said on there. Unfortunate that this one program went to extremes. I watch network programs every day and don't agree with a lot of things they say. But they're still running. They're still on. This is a decision that's up to BCTV. We, as the cable board, have adopted, as we said, their rules and regulations. That I don't agree with, but there's also a lot of programs that need to be aired. So thank you, Paul, for your programs.
Thank you all for attending.
I just have a quick question. When will you make the decision to?
BCTV and their attorneys make the decision.
Yeah.
Oh, is there a time frame, a reasonable time frame within 30 days?
We've made the
decision
decision.
Has been made.
We are not broadcasting the show any longer.
So then why have this meeting today?
Because
At the request, that's part of our process, and at the request of Mr. Taros or any other producer, including me, if I produce something that got out of control.
Let's go.
Again,
Let's go.
out of respect. Excuse me. The process is very clear. The process is that you go through the programming committee and that everyone has time to talk. I took Mr. Terrace's call. I will still take Mr. Terrace's call. I will take anyone's call with respect. These are the guidelines. We cannot change them. We are not going to change them. We don't make this decision. BCTV, who produces the programs, and the contract you signed with them to produce are the guidelines. And that is where the sticking point is here. It is not a matter of any of the other things that we all feel strongly about. We are volunteers and appointed officials. We have a higher standard than elected officials. We don't take any of this lightly. And if you watch any of the things we do in public, you will see that.
The sad reality is this is much bigger than attorneys and journalists in the room. This is about free speech. And that is something that, again, the rest of the world looks to us. For example,
also
and we've
immigrants
utterly
coming here
failed.
with no information, unable to speak the language. I was the first person to go to college in my family. And there's a reason why I chair this board, and this is my volunteer position, because I believe in everybody having the same speech. But the guidelines that apply to me apply to every producer, and those have to be respected because there are other things at issue here. It is not about free speech. It is about rules. And if you were to do a network program, by the way, the rules may be completely different. But for this venue with public money, these are the rules, and we must respect them.
But then you must respect the law, and in law,
That's why we have consultants here.
He said in his statement that this is potentially slanderous or libelous. He did not say that it was resolved potentially slanderous and libelous. You can't make a decision until you resolve that legally. So you can make all your business decisions, but it is not a legal decision at this point until that is resolved. And he will back me up on this, won't you?
Okay, excuse me, just so we know.
Silence, okay.
Let's be respectful, always. Everybody has strong feelings.
But that is the issue.
We all will be respectful of the process. I would appreciate the same respect that I'm affording everybody here and that Mr. Taros and I have had in the discussions in the last 5 days. If there's nothing else, we need to adjourn. Anything further can go through BCTV. They are in charge of this decision.
I have one question.
This is the last question of the day, but thank you.
And I
Go right
understand
ahead.
your rules and policies.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, you've made them clear. Anywhere in your rules and policies, does it say that if that happens, potential slander or libel, that the show must be canceled?
All of the rules are there. They are applying them. I would highly recommend that you pull them up, and they are on the BCTV website.
I understand.
Absolutely.
Do the rules say that the show must be canceled?
3.5 in the policies and procedures for program review. 3.5.
Okay, it says.
We also notice who you need to contact, our township supervisor.
I'm sorry, what does that say?
If there's nothing else.
These shows are
Thank you.
subjected to review after 3 months and annually thereafter to confirm they adhere to BCTV and BACD standards and policies. Shows not in compliance are subject to cancellation.
Subject to, but don't have.
I was not given a 3.5 in my manual. Here's a printout of my manual that I read and agreed to. 3.5 is not in here.
And the show will not be here. Go show the attorney and Greg. And Mr. Kowalski, you should watch a show, you should watch shows that you are in charge of. Why do you
Again,
not watch
excuse
those
me.
shows?
We are not going to have personal discussions. Anything that you need, the decisions will be made here at BCTV. If you would care to email me, you can certainly do that as well. I have my card, anyone can email me. I will absolutely return every single phone call. I will absolutely have a discussion with anyone in a respectful manner, in a professional way. These are our charges and we must adhere to them. Anything else that you'd like to say? Since you're the person at issue here before we close.
Well, there is the disclaimer at the end of the show. The views and opinions of the guests are not of BCTV. So I kind of wonder how BCTV could be considered liable if one, you have that disclaimer. Two, the attorney is saying potentially libelous or slanderous. The policies and procedures manual says slanderous or libelous. There's a difference, potentially.
There it is. There is.
There is.
Yes, they would explain that there, once you reach that threshold, it's way too late, but I will let the attorney respond.
And one more thing I'd like to say is nowhere in there, and again, 3.5 was not in my policies procedures manual, that me violating any of these provisions results in the cancellation of my entire show. If you want to cancel that one show, I understand. I can accept that. I don't want to see the township get sued.
Well,
But
you have had that discussion in the past when you had the other show that was at issue, correct? Correct.
no, well, it was canceled, but there was no discussion of whether it was slanderous or libelous. And again, I would submit that it was not. And, you know, over a 2-year period to make 2 little mistakes, I think this is an overreaction, and I don't want to get into why I think Greg is canceling the show or why Leo is canceling the show, but I have my suspicions, and it's not about these 2 little incidents.
May I just ask one last question? When did you first produce your show? Do you know what year it was that you began?
Well, it's been about 2 years.
Okay, so the policies and procedures that were absorbed and revised start way back in 2002, go all the way through 2018, 2016, May of both of those years, and June in 2012. So that category, that absolutely is in here. But in any case, I will
Look
let
at
the
the
attorney
copy I
have the last
have.
word.
How did I get that copy?
I will let the attorney have the last word.
Again, this is, the Bloomfield Cable controls their content. They have the right to control their content. They've published policies, there's standards that are required to be followed. In their judgment, they were not followed by this program. They're exercising their right. They made a decision not to air it any longer. That's their decision. This board has heard comments, given you an opportunity to speak to the issue. And I believe the decision has been made.
And the reason we
It's
had the
really-
programming committee is because that is our process, and we treat this program and these questions exactly as we treat all others. So the same thing would apply to me, which I have yet to do it, but I would sign the same documents and I am subject to the same restrictions, as are anyone in our 4 communities who produce programs. And when we have programs mailed to us that we put on public access, they could be religious programming or political programming, they go through the same standards as well. The same rules are applied. One last thing, yes?
Not to get sappy, but our brave American forefathers swore to give their lives, their liberty, and their sacred honor to protect free speech. In 2018, it seems that we are so cowardice that we only allow speech if it conforms to some politically correct notion of acceptable speech. We are entering a dangerous place when we start allowing cowardice men to then say that, oh, we're going to lose this, or oh, we're going to lose that, if potentially we have slander. We're in a very dangerous place. We have to have some firm commitment to the Constitution I don't know if you guys swore an oath to protect and defend the Constitution, but that's a very important document, and it's a very important philosophy for all of us to maintain.
I would say in closing, and I appreciate everyone's opinion, I buried my father, who is a veteran. He fought in the war as an immigrant. He did not become a citizen until after the war, and I buried him on Memorial Day just recently. And if there's anyone who feels more strongly about the respectful discourse and how important it is to appreciate all sides of an issue, I'd be hard pressed to find someone at this table. More so, I don't make the decision. I agreed to coordinate the subcommittee with the PEG chair and the 2 attorneys and the people in charge of BCTV out of respect for the process, because the process, as you point out, is critical. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate it.
One more statement. There's been several comments that have been made about perceptions about motivation for this action. The reason this action was taken was because of the content that was shown on that show. You can agree or disagree with the action taken, but the motivation behind it was because of the content on that show. I just want to make that clear.
Okay. Thank you. We are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Well, there you have it. Thank you again for watching this broadcast live streaming to you from Beverly Hills, Michigan. And talk to you later on. See you at the next Liberty meeting. Bye.